everyone and welcome along to my Jesmonite tutorial. So if you've bought one of my starter kits recently, let's explore what you're going to get. So this is the bucket you'll receive, and inside that bucket you are going to get your bag of gypsum-like material. Now Jesmonite is a composite material. It's made up of two parts. So you've got your gypsum powder and then you have your acrylic resin. Now this is totally safe to use. It's VOC free and a water-based system. So those are the magic parts that make up the Jesmonite. In your kit you will also find two moulds so you can get started straight away making your trinket trays or coasters. And there's so many patterns and colours that you can create, because in your kit I've also provided 5 colours. So you have your 3 primaries, red, blue, yellow, and I've also added the black and the white to the kit. So we have those. You'll get a pair of gloves, some lollipop sticks. What else do you get? I think that's everything. No, you also get a set of written instructions, okay? So there's some written instructions for you should you need to refer back to them at any time. So let me show you some of the designs and some of the other items you may have purchased. So let me show you terrazzo. Now this is from a different mould to the ones that we're using, but I've sold all the rest. So this is the only one I've got left to show you. So this is terrazzo, and this is extremely popular. So I'm going to show you how we make the terrazzo style using our Jesmonite kit. There's a trinket tray which came with the kit. That one's using a swirl pattern and mixing colours. You may have also purchased the heart tea light holder. This is the heart tea light. Here's one I made earlier. Okay, using the swirly pattern. So you've got your tea light holder potentially. And the pebble tea light holder. Now this is my favourite. I love the pebble tea light holder. It's so tactile. It's like you've just found a stone on the beach. The feel, the touch of Jesmonite. Once you make your first Jesmonite item, you're going to be hooked. So that's the mould. Now the moulds themselves, these moulds, the tea light moulds, I make here myself. I'm made with a really good silicone, and it's ever so strong, really tough. Now because it's handmade, you may find a few little areas on the edge that where I've trimmed after I've taken the object out of the mould. These are not going to affect your casting. They're just fine little bits of silicone that overlap. They're not going to affect your work at all. They are super, super strong. They're not going to tear, and they're going to last you a lifetime. So we have those. And lastly, this one wasn't made by me, but this is a clock mould. So you'll also have the option to make your own clocks. And the clock mould comes with the fitment that you just put through the hole in the middle and attach your hands to the front. Now you can use any receptacle you have at home to mix your Jesmonite. I use silicone cups. I used to use paper cups. Sometimes I'll use paper cups as well, just for the mixing of the product. I also sell lollipop sticks come with the kit, so you can use your lollipop sticks to stir, but I also sell these paint stirrers, and these are fabulous to really mix the product quickly and without lumps. So maybe you've purchased a couple of these along with your kit. I've got some tissue paper in case I make any spills, which knowing me, I possibly will. And then the first thing we're going to do, here's a pot of chips for the terrazzo that I showed you earlier that I made. Now, another fabulous fact about Jesmonite is that there's very little waste, okay? So I'm going to start off showing you how to make these really fun chips, which we're going to use in our first item. All of the molds that you get come with how much Jesmonite you need to mix for each one. So don't worry, everything is explained to how much you need, and I'm going to take you through it now. So the first thing we're going to make are the chips. Just a couple of other things that you're going to need: a spoon or something to get your powder out, and a set of kitchen scales. Okay, now I work in grams, so just pop those on, turn them on. I have covered my scales with a bit of clear plastic just to keep them clean. I can just whip it off and wipe them down. I'll just reset my scales. Okay, and we're ready to go. So for the chips, I have down, but I've got a bit of silicone here, just a silicone mat, or you could use any piece of plastic that's laying around. You could use an old carrier bag to make your chips on. Okay, just something that you're going to be able to cook. In fact, I'm going to use this cellophane bag. So the first thing we're going to do is give our bottle a good shake, make sure everything's mixed through, and we're going to start with just 20 grams of the liquid. Now I use a spoon to pop it in, just so I don't spill. Just 20 grams. Pop that into your mixing pot. As I say, you could use a silicone pot like this. I wouldn't use your best china cups. So there's my 20 grams. Where's my tissue? And just clean that spoon off. And then we're going to weigh out the powder. Now the ratio between the acrylic resin and the gypsum is 2.5 to 1. So that's 1 part of the liquid and then times it by 2.5. So we've got 20 grams of liquid, which means we need 50 grams of gypsum. So in we go. Let's measure this out. Doesn't matter if you're slightly out. So that's going to take my scales up to 70 because I already had 20 on there. Nearly there. I just find this is the tidiest way of doing it, of decanting. 60, 64, nearly there. Half a spoon should do it. 68. 70. There we go. So pop that to one side. And now we're going to stir our mixture, okay? You need to give it a good stir and get all the lumps off the side. It's going to remind you of making pancakes, okay? It's that consistency, sticky and gooey. Now because this is a tiny pot and we're just doing the flakes, I'm using my wooden stirrer, okay? It's a bit too small to really get my paint stirrer in there. But with a small amount, you'll find that you very easily can disperse any lumps, just as I say, like making pancakes. So here we go. So we've got a runny, quite thick consistency. If it's really thin, then maybe check that you put the right measurements in. And there we have our first batch of mixed Jesmonite. Wonderful. So the base colour of Jesmonite is like a cream colour. It's a white, just off-white colour. A bit like oats, a bit like porridge. Okay, and it dries slightly lighter. And then we can jazz this up with whatever colours we want. Now, as I said earlier, the pigment is extremely strong. It comes with a tiny little dropper in the top, and you only need one drop in. There we go, just one drop, and you'll see how potent this colour is. Mix it around, mix it right in. It's important that that colour is mixed through. Now if you want a darker colour, add a second drop. So I've got a bit of pale blue in there. I'm going to add one more drop of Jesmonite pigment. Now people ask me all the time, can I use acrylic paints to tints? Can I use other products to colour the Jesmonite? And the answer is you don't need much, okay? 1 or 2 drops to 100 grams of product. If you start using acrylic paint, you could risk changing the compound structure of the Jesmonite and it won't set, and you don't want to take that risk. And it also come out extremely weak, so you would need a lot of acrylic paint to achieve the same colour you get with the Jesmonite pigment. So they are very strong. Try not to get them on your hands. They will wash off, but they are strong indeed. Okay, so once we've got it mixed, I'm going to bring my plastic bag back here, and I'm just going to pour this on the bag at one end, scrape it all out. There we go. And you can see I've pretty much emptied the pot. However, if I leave this pot now to dry, don't wash it out, that would just be a waste. If you leave this just to cure in the pot, when it's set, you can just squash your pot up and crumble and make more chips. So I've got my puddle of Jesmonite sitting there. I'm just going to come in with my lollipop stick and spread that along my plastic. Okay, I wouldn't stick it to paper because it will pick up the fibres of the paper. So you do need something shiny like a carrier bag, a bit of plastic. There we are. So I'm spreading that fairly even, trying to get it even, but it really doesn't matter. Just spreading that out. So this is an A4 bag, so you can see the 20 grams of liquid with 50 grams of gypsum pretty much will give you nearly an A4 amount. Okay, I'm just going to pop that lollipop stick in a bucket of water. I'm just going to grab a tissue, guys, bear with me 1 second. Here we go. So have a bucket of water nearby so you can clean your equipment and just wash that off. I don't like throwing things away, so clean off my lollipop stick for next time. So just drop it in some water and give it a rinse. Okay, now one of the best things about Jesmonite is the speed, okay? 25 to 30 minutes and this will be set and we'll be ready to make our first lot of terrazzo chips. So if you want to, maybe mix up 2 sets of colours so that you can get some variety when you come to do your object. And you can use the terrazzo style in all of these. You can do the clock, you can do your tea light moulds, and here's some other colours that I've mixed up. So this is my pot of chips, and it's a mixture of ones I've made like this and the residue of the Jesmonite when I break it off the cups. I've got some orange here and a lilac, so we're going to have some fun with those in just a minute. So I'm just going to pop that somewhere to dry and we'll come back to it in 25 minutes. Okay, so whilst that's setting, let's go on and make our heart tea light holder. Okay, I'm going to take a slightly bigger pot, turn my scales on. Now, we're going to do a couple of colours in this one. I'm going to be doing white and let's make a green. Okay, let's make it interesting. So we're going to mix our own green and we're going to make white as well. So we'll start off as always with the liquid, and I'm going to measure out 40 grams of the liquid. As it's a bit more, I'm just going to pour straight in. There we go. Just wipe off the edge. Pop the lid on. Always keep the lid on your liquid. Okay, it is an acrylic, and if air gets to it, it can start getting a skin on the top. So keep the lid on. So there we are. So 40, do your maths, times 2.5 means I need 100. 2 times 40 is 80, and then half of 40 is 20. So I'm going to take 100 grams into my mixture. And I actually had 61, so just going to put a tiny bit more. There we go. So that's our mixture. Move your scales out of the way. We don't need those anymore. And now we're going to stir like we did before together. I'm using my paint stirrer because it's much quicker and more efficient than the lollipop stick. Remember, we've only got 25 minutes until this completely cures. So we don't want to waste time mixing and getting rid of the lumps. Already, there are no lumps in my liquid. There we are. That's ready for us to create. Now, as I said, I want 2 colours. Here's my bucket of water. Okay, now this is when it's key. Scrape the Jesmonite off your stirring implement. Whiz it around in your bucket of water. Give it a swirl. And another top tip is to wipe that off straight away. Okay, even in the water, the Jesmonite will harden. So wipe it off and then you're ready to go for the next time. Okay, I'm going to take another little pot and I'm going to split my colours into 50-50. Okay, so I'm going to pour some of the Jesmonite into a second pot. And there we go, roughly. I'm not worried whether it's exactly equal. It's just an effect that I'm going for. And now I'm going to put the white drop, just going to pop 2 drops, 1, 2 of the white. Now white in particular, now I'm going to go back to my lollipop sticks and just mix that through till it's blended in. The same with your pigments, pop the lid back on after you've used them. I'm just going to pop a 3rd drop. I want it a little bit whiter than that. There we go. And mix that in. White is one of the heavy pigments. Don't be tempted to use too much white. The white particularly can affect curing time and may leave you with sticky spots. So a little rather than a lot. There's my white. And now I'm going to mix up my green. Let's have some fun. I'm going to go with the yellow first. 1, 2, 3 drops of yellow in there. Let's mix that in. We could do yellow and white, that would be nice, but I want to show you colour mixing. Wipe off the stick. And then I'm going to add, I want this quite a bright green, so I'm not going to go too strong on the blue. Put 1 drop in to start and then see what it looks like. Ooh, beautiful. That's all I needed. So I had 2 drops of yellow to 1 drop of blue. Can you see that? Some lovely, sharp-ish beautiful green there. You can see it on the stick. Just make sure that's fully mixed in. Wipe off your stick. Okay, now you have two options here, guys. You can pour some white into the green and let it just pour out of the cup together. So we'll do a bit of that. I'm going to pour some white down into the green. I'm going to give it a little swirl around and then start pouring into the heart. Now when you're pouring these into moulds, I want you to have a good distance between you and the mould, because there is air. As we've stirred the Jesmonite, you create air bubbles. So if you pour from a height, as it lands, you'll release the air. So you can do it that way, get a nice mottled effect, or you can pour one into the other at the same time. Wow, that's so pretty. Keep going. Just pouring them at the same time and just letting the magic happen. There we go, up to the top. I have a little bit left over, so if you have this situation and you have a bit spare, always have bits of plastic nearby. I'm going to pour that onto my mat and I'm going to make more chips. There we go. Just scrape out the excess. No waste. You've got some chips ready for your next project. Pop that cup to one side to dry, and again just spread out onto your mat the excess. Just going to throw that lollipop stick in the water and clean it up later. I've got a little bit left in the white, so let's do that as well. Pop the white down away from the green. There we go. You may hear a clock ticking in the background, and that's because I have my egg timer going for the 25 minutes for the first lot of chips that we put down. Okay. Now for your heart, once you've poured it, we want to release extra air bubbles. So we're going to tap it up and down gently. We're going to tap the sides and bounce it on the work surface. You can drop it, doesn't matter if you spill a bit over the side, you can clean that up. And what that's going to do is going to make the air bubbles come to the top. You could also blow on the surface. Just with the warmth of your breath on the surface will help disperse those air bubbles. This one's really pretty. And of course we won't see the real beauty of it until we take it out of the mould. So tap that a few times, give it a last pat for luck, and again move that away to another area to cure. Okay, let's see how. So it's been 25 minutes since we poured our terrazzo chips, and they're ready for us to crumble up, and this is such fun. So just grab a tub to keep your bits in. I'm going to peel this off, and you can see it starts crumbling straight away. A good tip, if you've used a plastic bag like this, is just to break it up on the paper, on the plastic sheeting or silicone sheet mat, and just crumble it up into big pieces. It's so satisfying. Now, I wouldn't have them too big. Now that would be far too big in an item this size. So I'm going to break them up into like granules. So a couple of mil size. There are other designs you can do where you crumble them even smaller, and it's called confetti, but we're going to go for fairly substantial chunks, just crunching them all up. Such fun. Look how many chips we've created. And then just get those bits off the edge, pick up my paper and pour them into my pot. Okay, there's one I missed. And it's really easy to crumble. Jesmonite, actually, the full curing process for it to harden to its toughest point. And Jesmonite is a really strong material. They build houses out of Jesmonite. This one that we're using is mainly for indoor use, but you can seal it afterwards to make it suitable for outdoors too and waterproof it. Okay, so there's my chips, a bit smaller, just crunching them up. And to say, if you left that on your paper till the next day, you'd find it, you could still break it because it's very thinly spread, but it's harder. So do it straight away as soon as it's set, and it's much easier on the hands. So we're ready to do our terrazzo coaster or trinket dish. Could be used for either. So let's use the hexagon one. And I've got some other chips here that I made previously. I've got a few pink ones left. I've got pink and a little bit of white in there as well that I've mixed. Now this is, can you see how much harder that is for me to break? Because this was made days ago. Now and again, if you've taken the residue of your cup, sometimes you'll find fat bits. That's the only bit that I'd say that I would waste. I'd throw that. It's a bit too chunky to use. And then of course I've got my pot here. So I'm just going to crumble that up, get rid of all what's left on the pot, and then it just needs a little rinse out and you're ready to use your pot again. No waste, little waste. Okay, so I'm going to mix my chips together. I'm going to put some blue in with the pink. You can add as many colours as you want. Okay. And I want these chips to show up. So I'm going to pour some into I'm going to get my scales back. Turn them on. Wait for them to set. Okay, so I've reset the scales to 0, and I'm going to put some of these chips in to see if I've got enough to get a nice colour. So I really want my tray half full of chips, okay? And then look how much those weigh, 50 grams. So that's 50 grams of chips. So I'm going to pop those back in there for a second. 50 grams, remember that number. So I'm going to weigh out 45 grams of liquid. Always remember to reset your scales. 45. There we go. 45, so that gives us 90. Plus half of 45, which is, let's say, 23. 90 and 23, 113 grams. I'm just going to go with white because I think that will be best for the camera. So already that's mixed. Just go round your sides, give it a good scrape round and a final stir. Get rid of that excess Jesmonite, pop it in your water bucket and give it a swirl. And wipe off, ready for next time. I'm going to stick with white, so I'm going to put 1, 2, 3, 4 drops of white in and give that a good stir. You do want to make sure that pigment's fully incorporated into your paste. There we go, beautiful. Get rid of the excess from your stick and wipe it off. So now the fun begins. I'm going to take my chips and I'm going to pop them in, put them all in to your pot and give it a good old stir. You want them all to be coated, nicely coated in the liquid Jesmonite. Our trinket dish, and in we go. Pouring from a height. It's like porridge. There we go. And now I'm just going to make sure all the chips are below the surface. I've filled this right up to the very top. And then we're going to do our tapping again. So lift it up carefully and bounce. Don't worry if you get a bit of spillage, just wipe that away. We'll show you in a moment, as we're nearly ready to take our first casting out, how to tidy it up. Give it a bounce. Tap the edges. Remember, we're releasing air bubbles. You could also, because we're using chips, just take your lollipop stick down those grooves at the side, just to make sure everything has got down that edge, that little gully that sits around the side. Wipe my stick off, and then I'm just going to clean up the edge with my tissue. You can blow the top, remember, to get rid of any excess air bubbles that are still coming up to the surface. Just going to pop that chip back under the surface there. It's bounced up. You've got about 5 minutes once you've poured it to tinker around, and then it starts to cure. So you don't want to touch it after that point. Okay? If you do touch it after that point, it's not going to sit back down and it's going to stay raised up. So I'm just going to move this one. Pull that tissue off. Over to the other side. And leave it, just give it a blow. Gentle blow on the surface. And we're going to leave that to sit there and cure. Set your timer, 25 minutes. Okay, so my alarm's just gone off. My 25 minutes is up for the tea light. Now, before you take it out of the mould, if you feel the surface of the Jesmonite, it's got a warmth to it. As it cures, it generates heat. And the moment your 25 minutes is your guide, it can be anything from 25 to 40 minutes. But 40 minutes really is the maximum. And then you want to be taking it out of the mould. You can also test it by just peeling back from the edge. Pop that back. If it releases nicely like this one is, it's ready to come out. So here we go. Push underneath. Grab hold. And out she comes. There we are. How wonderful is that? Swirly greens and whites. Our first Jesmonite tea light. And the warmth is beautiful to your hand and it will feel soft. I'm just looking for air bubbles and I don't see any. Let me pop my glasses on. No air bubbles. There we are. So I'm going to show you how to finish this off. and just sand off the back to make it nice and flat. I use wet and dry sandpaper. That's the best thing to use with Jesmonite when you're tidying up the back and getting rid of any imperfections. You can use normal sandpaper, but with normal sandpaper, the dry sandpaper, you're going to create a lot of dust. And this way, you're minimizing the dust and the mess. So I'm going to take my bucket of water, and this happens, the best time to sand them is as soon as they've come out of the mold. And I'm going to drop that whole tea light in my bucket of water. I'm going to take my 240. There's 3 different grits of sandpaper that I use. We've got 240, which is the hardest, still very soft sandpaper, 240, 400 and 600. And if it's just the base that I need to tidy up, I'll take the 240, wet the paper, and just gently sand the back. I use a circular motion. And you can see this film of Jesmonite being created. Rinse that off again. Rinse off your sandpaper. The sandpaper will last ages. The wet and dry sandpaper. There we are. Nice and smooth. No bumps. Now I wouldn't bother using the finer papers for the base, but if you wanted to, if you had an imperfection on the surface, then I would go to a 400 and then a 600. The same again, hold the paper, rub it against it, wash off the residue, and you're good to go. So I'd save the 600 for any fine details. We'll just take a bit of tissue now, dry that off, get rid of the water. And you need to place Jesmonite on a cooling rack to dry. Although it's dry to touch, as I said, the curing process will go on for 24 hours. And it's hard as stone now, and it just carries on curing and getting harder and harder. I wouldn't put any sealant on this until the 24 hours has passed. What's happening is the water in the water-based system needs to carry on drying out, and if you was to put a sealant on this or wax on this now, it would keep the water in and stop it coming through. If you left this in the mould for too long, it would also start sweating and you'd get sweat marks. So that's why it's important to keep it in the mould no longer than 40 minutes. Do your cleaning up and your sanding, and then place it somewhere where air can circulate. On a drying rack would be best. And then if you want to add a sealant to it, you can do that the next day. Okay, now 25 minutes is up. Let me feel. It's nice and warm, but it's starting to cool down. So I'm ready to demold. So we're just going to pull back from the edge to release the Jesmonite. Just push it back to make sure that it's fully cured. You'll see if it comes away easy, you're happy to demold. With the coasters, once I've released the edge, I turn them upside down, push against the surface and release the mould. Okay, now this one I filled quite deeply, so I don't know if you can pick that up. Around the edge there are just some flakes there, just some little bits. You can just peel those off with your finger, just break them off. And again, doing this whilst it's just come out the mould is the best time. Take that off. And because we tapped it well and I pushed that stick around the edge, around the gully of the trinket dish or coaster, however you want to use it, I've got no air bubbles in the surface. And that's also helped by the fact that I poured it from a height. So we can see the terrazzo chips, but they're not very bold. If I bring this one back, you can see they're on the surface. So the downside of terrazzo, but the beauty of it as well, is that you have a bit of work to do with your sandpaper. I'm just going to get rid of those little bits that I've broken off into my pot, saving them for later. And we're going to go about sanding. Let me show you how we're going to bring the beauty out of the chips. So I've got my bucket of water, fresh water, and I'm going to start with my 240 grit wet and dry sandpaper, and I'm going to submerge that in the water, get it nice and wet. You could do this under your sink, of course, as well. Wet your sandpaper as well, and then I'm going to fold that around my finger and circles. Now it's going to take around 15 to 30 minutes of sanding. The more you sand, the more terrazzo you're going to reveal. And already, just a minute in, the colours are starting to pop. So just washing off my sandpaper and keep going, circular motion. Rinse it off. Rinse off your coaster or your tea light, whatever you're working with. Get rid of the paste, and then already look at those colours coming through. Here we go again. Keep working. As I say, 10 to 15 minutes. Depends on how many chips you'll put in as well. You could put more chips than I put in. Remember, I put 50 grams of chips in. You could put a bit more if you really want, and you can go mad with your colours. Have a kaleidoscope of colours. Now wash your sandpaper off because it's going to get clogged up with Jesmonite. Just give it a rinse, and you can see that paste on the surface, so rinse it off again. Keep it nice and clean. And we've got more chips revealed. We'll keep going. There's some more over this side that I want to pop through. Now this is the 240 grit. Once I've got it back to a position where I've revealed enough of the terrazzo chips, then I'll go to my 400, and then I'll finish on my 600. I'm just coming along the edge there of the coaster, going into the grooves. It really is like magic as you pull back just that surface layer of Jesmonite and reveal the colours underneath. Wash that again. Wash off your sandpaper and repeat. A few more over this side that I want to come through. Oh, here we go. Here they come. So you can fast forward this section of the video. Wash it off, wash your sandpaper off. Here they come. Look at that. Beautiful. And the colour combinations are endless. I'm going to go around the edge as well. So just flip it on its side. Just working that backwards and forwards. And the magic is just under the surface. And don't forget the back, we want to smooth that off. The terrazzo style does mean that you have a bit of a bumpy rear, a bumpy back. So you need to give that a good sand with your 240 grit. You could use a harder grit for the back if you wanted to. I find 240 works well for me. And I'm also just going to soften off the edges. So I'm just going to wrap my sandpaper around the angles and just soften the sides. Rinse that off again. There we go. And now I would move to my 400 grit paper, just so I've got a nice smooth finish. Circular motion again. And finish on your 600. So after about 10 minutes sanding, this is what I've revealed. You could sand the back more. I don't see the point of sanding the back because it's going to be sitting on the surface, but if you enjoy revealing the terrazzo, you could continue sanding the reverse side as well. And there's our first terrazzo trinket dish. Again, dry it off after the sanding and place it on a drying rack somewhere, particularly with the coaster. You don't want to get any sweat marks on the base. If you don't have a drying rack, use your mould and just place it over a corner so that the air can get around the piece. Okay, so you could put your tea light on one corner and your trinket dish on the other and leave that 24 hours, and I'll show you how to finish them in a moment. Tea light holder. And I want to show you, if you have some mica pigment, how you can incorporate mica pigment with your Jesmonite. So it's not by putting it into the Jesmonite, that doesn't work at all. But I've got this metallic copper. I'm just going to pick up a tiny bit of mica pigment and dust a couple of areas in the mould. And I'm really going to work that mica pigment onto the surface. So I want this to have a metallic pattern. You could take it all over if you wanted. Just dust it, get rid of any excess, blow it away, and really smooth that into your mould. Okay. Always pop your lid back on your mica. You don't want accidents. 150 grams of the gypsum. Set your scales. Okay, so just to recap, we have so far made one trinket dish, we have made our tea light heart, we've made a clock, and now we're going to do the heart, and we've still got enough left for at least another trinket dish. Let me just get a little idea what you've got left. You've got about another 60, so you could do another pebble. Plenty to get you started with this kit. So that's my 60 grams. Let's get my powder. Find goes really well with copper is kind of teal, turquoisey colour. And one more and we're done. Okay, so there's still plenty left in that bag for your next project. Here we go. Stirring stick. make our lovely batter, Jesmonite batter. The real trick, because when you are stirring these components together, you don't want to whisk it really, really fast because you're going to create even more air bubbles. So a nice steady stir, scrape the sides again, scrape the bottom, and already that's like a beautiful smooth batter. Because Jesmonite is VOC free and not harmful, if you fancy using your paint stirrer next time you make your Yorkshire batter or your pancakes, give it a go. It's really good. Okay, wipe that off, clean it straight away, remember. And now we're going to mix our colour. So I'm going to start with the blue. 1, 2, 3, 4 drops of blue and yellow. So blue and yellow will make green, but if I just use a little bit of yellow, I'm going to try 1 drop to start with and see how we go. Give that a good stir. Lovely. Perfect. Exactly what I wanted. Stir that all in. Now, if it's come out slightly darker than you want, you can add a little bit of white to it, but go cautious. Remember, you don't want too much pigment because it can stop that process. There we go. A beautiful teal colour. That was 4 drops of blue and 1 drop of yellow. Pop that in my bucket and we're ready to go. So pour from a height. It helps release air bubbles, a nice slow stream. Don't go too fast. Let it find its way. Filling it up to the top just before you get to the very top. And I can't see hardly any air bubbles. I have a little bit extra, so I'll grab my paper. I'm just going to get my silicone mat. There's a little bit extra there. Just pour that out. And spread it just like we did at the beginning with your lollipop stick to make chips for later. Is our tap in, drop, tap it, hear it fudding on the table, tap the sides. As I say, if you mix it correctly and pour it from a height, you're not going to get many bubbles. They're tiny and most of them will disperse on their own. Give it a little blow. Gently. And set your timer for 25 minutes. Okay, our time is up. Our pebble tea light holder is cooled nicely. Again, peel away from the sides. Whoops, out she pops. Push back and pour out your tea light. Wow. Now, this is the one that we use the mica pigment on. I'm going to give that a quick buff with a bit of kitchen tissue just to show you the shine. Bring that shine out. And you can see very little mica comes off onto the tissue because of the heat that's generated from the curing process. You get that lovely metallic sheen. So I'm just using a bit of kitchen roll at the moment, but when this is fully cured, I shall go over it with a microfiber cloth and really bring out that buff. There we go. our turquoise and copper. I'm just going to put something white underneath instead of my pink cutting mat so you can see the colours better. Beautiful. Now turquoise, again no air holes, no bubbles, and all I need to do is sand off just that edge on the back. It's lovely and smooth on the base. I would just take my sandpaper and take that little edge off where it came to the top of the mould. Mica pigment and Jesmonite. So for the final mould is my little succulent pot, and I've stuck with the turquoise. This takes the same as the tea light holder, so 60 plus 150. I'm going to mix my white into my turquoise, and I want this one to be swirly. I'm going to take all that white in to the turquoise. I'm going to give it a swirl, so I'm going to stir it in, but not fully. And remember the trick, start from high. Down we go, slow drizzle over the middle. Now again, you could mix terrazzo chips with this if you wanted to, or you could just go for a plain colour. You could layer, you could create an ombre effect by mixing a light colour and adding more pigment as you go. Just take your time, let that fill to the top. I'm going to take some of my spoon, my stirrer around the side, just to get those last bits out. There we go, just to top it off. And, oh, I thought so. I didn't use all my white, so I was a little bit short. Scrape that out. And that's going to be the bottom of the pot. Remember, the bit that you see at the top as we're pouring is actually the bottom of the article. I'm just going to do that little swirl. Mix that in and give it a tap. Give it a squeeze with this one. You can squeeze the air out and bounce. And set your clock for 25 minutes. So for our final one, the little pot, it's a little bit tricky to get out. Always is with pots. I want you to push back on your mould until it clicks back over, and then roll it down until you've got it like this. Then squeeze it and pull out the plug. There we go. And you can very easily just pop that back in the right way, ready for next time. Look how wonderful this one's come out. And this was me swirling, if you remember, the white into the turquoise. Again, no bubbles, just need a bit of sanding on the base. And pop your plant in and you're good to go. So one more, push back until it curls over. Whoops, See, sometimes it can spring back on you. Don't worry, you do get used to that. Hold it down, push it over. Don't worry, the pot's strong. Peel back, pull out the plug, and then just pop it back in the right way, ready for next time. Whoops, push it back down, peel it back up, and you're ready to go again. And this one I did with dark blue at the bottom. Remember, it's in the mould that way up, so I put the dark blue at the bottom and then swirled white with blue. And look at that, beautiful. So there we go. So a final word, guys, about finishing your cured products. So I generally like to buff them. So I'll take a microfiber cloth. Let me show you on this one with the mica. Microfiber cloth, and give it a good polish. And if you like the natural feel of Jesmonite, I would leave it there. The only thing that I recommend putting the sealer on is if you're going to be using something outside or it's going to get wet. So your coaster. So microfiber cloth, then I use a finer one for a final buff. See, that mica pigment hasn't budged. We've still got that lovely sparkle going on there, and you get a nice sheen to your finished goods. So let's do that on this pot that we've just taken out. Give it a good buff and you'll just get a natural sheen come up. But again, on a plant pot, I would put a sealer on. Now you can use the sealer that comes from Jesmonite, which is an acrylic sealer. That will leave a film over the top that is going to protect your pot from water damage. It will change the feel of it. It won't feel like soapstone. It will give it a different texture, a different finish, but it will protect it. And the way that you apply this, I'll show you on the coaster. So this is a sealer, clear sealer. Tip a little drop. You only need a little amount, and take a soft brush or a soft foam roller and just very lightly brush that on to the surface. Let that dry for 10 to 15 minutes and give it another coat. 2 coats and then you're done. Okay? It doesn't change the look of the product, but it does change the feel. So the same again on a tea light holder. A little drop, whoops, too much, a little drop of sealer on the product, soft brush. You don't want any lumps, otherwise you'll have to sand them off. So use less rather than more. And just give it a coating, and then that is water resistant, stain proof, particularly if you're using obviously candles in a tea light holder. If you drop some wax on, it's not going to mark or stain. So brush that completely in, nice soft brush, flick it lightly over the surface and you're done. As I say, if it's a product that you're not going to use near water, so if you're going to use this as a trinket dish and you're just going to put rings and jewellery on, then I wouldn't worry about the sealer. So there we go. What an array of products you can create with Jesmonite. I hope you've enjoyed crafting along with me and that you get lots of pleasure from your Jesmonite kit. Take care.